Brexit. Yeah, that was a thing. It happened. And I know I'm not supposed to mention it, as the term Brexit is the real-life equivalent of reading incantations from the Book of the Dead. Just mentioning the word can cause undead spirits to raise up from the depths of hell, possessing each and every one of us, dragging all of us into a never-ending debate of left and right-wing ideologies, until eventually so much hate has come between us that the overlord of hell himself will rise up, bringing with him the apocalypse and the end of times. Of course, this is nonsense, but that's the power the term Brexit has. It has divided us, making us forget the things we once had in common and simply view one another as leave or remain, right or left, when the fact of the matter is, the decision you made when voting in or out does not define who you are. This isn't going to be a piece about how leaving is wrong. I'm not going to try and change anyone's mind, as the choice you make are yours alone. Yes, I voted to remain, but that doesn't mean I believe that leaving the EU is a bad thing. It just means I thought we should remain. I would like to think that most people, when faced with the vote, went through some sort of decision-making process when deciding in or out. How would leaving the EU affect me? How does it affect my family, my friends, my job? What are the wider implications? The economy, trade, immigration. How important these things are will have changed from person to person, so it's impossible to say what the most important issues would be. I asked myself these questions, and the answers inevitably influenced my decision. For example, my job. I work in a sector that would prefer closer ties with the EU, and leaving could see me or my friends and co-workers' jobs put at risk. The EU budget. Although this did not impact me directly, it was a hot topic at the time, and I could understand people's worries about how much money we gave to the EU without possibly seeing a return. Could this money be better spent elsewhere? However, throughout my decision-making process, there was always something at the back of my mind, something that kept pushing its way forward. No matter which side I fell on certain matters, this one thought remained and, in the end, came to influence my decision. That something was Star Trek. And to explain how Star Trek influenced my decision, I will need to explain how Star Trek influenced me. Star Trek was created long before I was born and came from the mind of Gene Roddenberry. It first aired in 1966 and followed the crew of the starship named Enterprise as it embarked on a 5-year mission to explore new worlds, seek out new life and new civilization, and boldly go where no man has gone before. My dad liked Star Trek, so of course he made me watch it at a young age, and I was hooked. He had the whole of the original series on VHS, and I would pick tapes at random to see what adventures the crew were going on next. As a child, my favourite was an episode called Arena, where Captain Kirk must fight a Gorn whilst trapped on an alien planet. As I got older and matured, so too did Star Trek, and I then discovered Captain Picard and the Next Generation crew, followed by Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and then Enterprise. So, by the time Brexit rolled around, I'd spent a lifetime watching Star Trek. And one thing I should probably explain is that being a Trekkie, or Trekker as some prefer to be called, is not like being a fan of some other TV show like Friends or Breaking Bad. Trekkies look at Star Trek as being more than just a TV show. They view Star Trek as being more like a modern-day morality play that will ask tough philosophical questions that help us make sense of the world and better understand the human condition. The lessons we then learn can be applied to our own everyday lives. For example, there is an episode of The Next Generation titled The Drumhead. This episode centres on an investigation that takes place after an explosion in the engine room. It appears to be the work of sabotage, so Starfleet send a retired admiral, Nora Satie, to determine the cause and find those responsible, should it turn out to be sabotage. By coincidence, a Klingon exchange officer is discovered using modified hypersprays to secretly transport information about Starfleet technology to the Romulans. Although the Klingon spy and the explosion are unrelated, Satie uses the events as evidence that a wider conspiracy exists on board the Enterprise. It is then discovered that the explosion in the engine room was caused by accident, and that sabotage was not involved. However, Sati ignores the evidence at hand and is determined to push forward with her investigation, with her focus placed firmly on a young medical technician named Simon Tarsis, who, she has discovered, is lying about something, but she doesn't know what. Despite there being no evidence that links the explosion, the Klingon, and Simon's unknown lie, she spins them to push a different narrative. A narrative that places everybody on the Enterprise under suspicion, including Captain Picard himself. Simon is then called to a public hearing, and upon being questioned about his Starfleet application, he invokes his right not to answer the question, as the answer may incriminate him. Later, Simon would tell Picard that his grandfather was Romulan, and that he lied about this on his application out of fear his application would be denied. Simon's refusal to answer the question is seen by Sati and her team of investigators, which now includes Lieutenant Worf, as an admission of guilt, prompting them to delve further into his history and call other members of the crew to hearings. Picard, not happy with how the investigation is unfolding, speaks out to both Worf and Sati. He compares the trial to that of a drumhead, a type of trial used in the 18th century where the accused would be tried and sentenced often unfairly. Picard explains that we cannot assume that someone is guilty just because they refuse to answer a question, and that guilt must always be proven. Picard's words fall on deaf ears, as he is told the public hearings will continue, and that Starfleet's Admiral Thomas Henry would be arriving to oversee the remaining hearings. Picard is then called to his own hearing to face questions regarding his command of the Enterprise. Sati questions Picard about those times he has broken the Prime Directive, disregarding the fact that Starfleet has already agreed Picard's actions in these instances was justified. She brings up Picard's interaction with the Borg and implies that Picard is responsible for the lives lost when he was enslaved as Locutus. It's at this point that Worf can see Sati is trying to spin a different version of events than those that actually took place, and speaks out for his captain. However, Sati then points out it may be poor judgment by Picard to have a chief of security who is the son of a traitor. Picard, with his usual poise and calmness, then invokes the words of Sati's own father, who himself was a judge. With the first link, the chain is forged, the first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. Upon hearing her own father's words used against her, Sati verbally lashes out, condemning Picard as a traitor and scolding him for being unworthy of using her own father's words. And it's here that Sati's fanaticism proves to be her undoing, as Admiral Thomas Henry leaves the hearing without speaking a word and then puts an end to the investigation. Sati is then left alone, with no more allies to help her in her quest for her version of the truth. The very last scene in the episode sees Lieutenant Worf approaching Picard. He is upset that he allowed himself to be manipulated by Sati, and could not see what she really was. Picard explains that given the right climate, there will always be someone looking to spread fear in the name of righteousness, and that vigilance is the price we must pay for such freedoms. There are many lessons that could be taken from just this one episode, but the one that resonates the most is that we must remain vigilant, as there will always be someone willing to twist or spin the truth in an effort to push their own ideological or political agenda. In a world where fake news is prevalent and social justice carried out on a whim, it's a lesson that might be more important at this moment in time than at any other point in history. There are many other episodes I could point out for teaching us a lesson, such as The Measure of Man, Duet, or The Offspring. Star Trek has never shied away from approaching difficult or relevant subject matters, be it racism, human rights, sexism, or religion, but I want to talk about the wider message that Star Trek projects. Roddenberry's aim, when creating the show, was to depict a future where mankind had put aside their differences and now worked together as one for the betterment of each other. At the centre of this optimistic vision of the future was the United Federation of Planets, an interstellar government of sorts that was made up of a number of different planets and civilizations. Being a member of the Federation was of course desirable, as it opened up trade, allowed far easier travel between distant planets, and the sharing of technology would offer a solution to almost any problem. Now, you don't have to be a Trekkie to see the similarities between the Federation and an organisation like the UN or the EU. And much like the EU, the Federation was not perfect. Many episodes have explored the problems that exist inside the Federation. But regardless of the issues that both the EU and the Federation have, and there are many, you cannot escape the fact that their founding principles should be positive for everyone involved. Setting aside the economic reason the EU was created, the idea of it in principle paints an appealing picture of the future. Much like the Federation, it looks to break down boundaries and bring us closer together as one race. It aims to remove borders and remove hostilities that exist between us based on nationality, creed, or colour. So, when I voted Remain, it wasn't because of my job, trade, or the ability to hop on a plane to another country with minimal passport checks. I voted Remain because the future that I believe we should all be striving for is one where we all work together for the betterment of ourselves, one where you are not discriminated against because of your race, one where you don't hate someone because they were born on the other side of an imaginary line. And I get it. Some people will call me naive, and maybe I am being too idealistic. I understand the EU has its problems, but that doesn't stop me from wanting that future for all of us. The EU was at least a beginning, and had we remained, we just might have been able to help mould it into something that worked for everybody. But like I said at the start, I'm not trying to preach. I'm not here to talk about all the doom and gloom that comes with leaving the EU, as I don't agree with that. I believe that moving forward we will be okay and possibly in many ways better off without the EU. It's just, in my opinion, we've taken a step in the wrong direction. Thank you for listening. I'm interested to know your views and why you voted the way you did. But please, keep it civil.